shop at home is through these things.
And we're ready for the budget work session, say it correctly.
All right, so in your agenda, you should have the PDF of the slideshow for this work session. So if you want to look that up, that way we don't have to have the TV going, that would be good. And everyone got that brought up?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Kind of let me know if you have any problems, we can walk you through getting it open. Who doesn't like you, Bill?
No point in it. Everybody knows I've used computers all day long. I don't want to talk.
It should be in your.
Yeah. Exactly where it should be.
It's in board docs.
So I'm shutting that down. It's just kind of fun.
You use computers all day long.
Sure. Yeah. Or you can use it right now.
There you go. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Everybody else got it all loaded up, so we're good to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let's see if I can find mine. Okay. So I'll try to make this as painless as possible. School finance can be very complicated and sometimes frustrating. But I'll try to make it as painless as possible. If you have questions at all at any point in time, stop me, yell at me, whatever you got to do, throw something at me. You got a jar full of candy there, you can, yeah. I may open my mouth and eat it as it's coming at me. So anyway, so I wanted to start off by just kind of going over the monthly budget report that I give to you guys every month. And so that's there on that, what would be your second slide in front of you. And hopefully you can read it. It's reading it itself for this particular situation is not crucial. But I kind of wanted to go over the individual lines of what you're seeing there. So the first thing, of course, is the budget line. That's the budget that we will pass. This one was passed December 2020, so just before some of you came onto the board. We passed a budget revision in December 2020, and those numbers that are in the budget line reflect that budget that was passed in December of 2020. We will be doing another budget revision probably in May, so that it will reflect a change there. The second line that you got there is the expended amount, and that is money that we've actually already spent. That is money that has already been sent out of the district. We've already written a check for it. Those people have already cashed the check, hopefully anyway, and the money has been sent out. The third line is your encumbered amount, and that is basically money, look at it as money that we've already committed to spend. So when we hire on a new employee and we put them all into the system, their salary immediately goes into the encumbered amount for the entire year, and their benefits go into the encumbered amount. We've dedicated or we've set aside that money to spend on that employee. When we write out a purchase order for whatever we're going to buy, it goes into the encumbered amount. We've already set aside the money to spend on that item. So that's what your encumbered amount is. It will always be the amount of money that we've already set aside. That money, that number will go down as the expenditure goes up. So if we said, hey, we're going to spend $100 on such and such item, and we spent 25 so far, so 25 will go into the expended, 75 stays in the encumbered, and it continues to move that direction. Your total amount is simply your expended amount plus your encumbered amount. So that is the total amount that we have either spent or set aside to spend. And then you have a budget balance of what is left. And that gets you, as you total all those up, down to the bottom. This was last month's budget report. We had $291,500, take off my glasses, $530.80 in budget capacity at that point in time. Then at the bottom, you have the graphs that I mentioned to you every time. We use Forecast 5 to create those graphs. They take our monthly balances and everything, and they put it into and create a graph for us based on what they expected us to spend and based on what we spent last year. So those are the two graphs that are there for you. guys have any questions on what we present to you guys on a weekly? Man, I'm glad we don't have a weekly budget. Monthly, yes, go ahead.
Is there a particular, is it the first day of the fiscal year that all the encumbered, unencumbered goes out?
No, those will change throughout the year. I mean, yes, for all the known encumbered, yes. So we will write out purchase orders for, say, all of our utilities. So we know approximately, based on history, how much we're going to spend in utilities. That'll go into encumbered. All of the salaries for the year will be encumbered. Some of those will change if an employee leaves or a new employee comes in, or if we have to add employees at the time. That will change. But as you go through the year, there will be different expenditures that will go in and out of the encumbrances based on what we need. But the known ones, yes, will go into right at the beginning of the fiscal year.
And what is the fiscal year?
July 1 to June 30.
Basically, the encumbrances are an educated guess on what you're gonna spend.
Right.
You know, on any such, for instance, what you're gonna spend on gasoline for the buses, what you're gonna spend on maintenance, for the buses, what you're gonna, well, this is even all, but anyways, encumbrances for any of the funds would be an educated guess looking back at what you've spent prior years.
Okay.
We also only give you the maintenance and operations fund budget. The reason for that is that's and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but that's the main fund where the operation of the district comes from. But also, if we gave you a budget report for every little fund that we had, we would be here all night long going through budget reports. So we give you the main budget report of the maintenance and operations fund, so you can see where we're at from a maintenance and operation perspective for the year, for the month and the year. Any other questions on that report? Okay, so the next slide after that just kind of will walk through each one of those items. That's all that really one was about. So if you go to the one that says M&O and UCO on the slide, it should be your fourth slide. So the M&O and the UCO. M&O is the Maintenance and Operations Fund. The UCO is the Unrestricted Capital Outlay. Those are the two primary funds for the operation of the district. Maintenance and operations, almost everything that we spend out in the way of all our salaries, all our maintenance throughout the district, any supply purchases, things like that come out of the Maintenance and Operation Fund. Unrestricted capital is primarily capital. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But those two funds, money can be moved from one fund to another. So we can move money from the maintenance and operation over to the unrestricted capital if we felt like we needed more money in capital, or we can move money out of capital into maintenance and operations if we felt like we needed to move it that direction. Once the fiscal year is over, those monies are locked into those two funds. You can't move them once the fiscal year is over. So as an example, we rolled over, I think it was like $170,000, something like that, in the unrestricted capital from last year to this year. We can't take that $180,000 there and move it over into M&O anymore. It's in capital. It can only stay in capital. So once the fiscal year is over, they're locked into those funds. Both of the funds are determined by average daily membership. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but they will vary year to year based on our average daily membership. So looking at the Maintenance and Operations Fund, the next slide, slide 5, tells you kind of what they're used for. Teachers' salaries and benefits. Almost all of our teacher salaries and benefits come out of the Maintenance and Operations Fund. We do have a few that come out of the grants, but most our teachers, most of our teacher salaries and benefits and other employees' salaries and benefits come out of the maintenance and operations fund. The two biggest expenditures that we have in the district is salaries and facilities. Those are, I mean, and it's the same pretty much in any district. Those are the two big ones that we have. So the other part of it is that utilities come out of that. So all our water and maintenance. So when we need to fix something, it's coming out of maintenance and operations, unless we can utilize something like the school facilities board to help us with certain items. Also supplies, the paper, printing supplies, all that stuff is coming out of maintenance and operations. The next slide is the unrestricted capital. Let me go back for just a second. Maintenance and operations, you cannot expend maintenance and operations funds for capital purchases. Capital purchases have to come out of the unrestricted capital fund. On the same end of the spectrum, you cannot spend your regular maintenance operations type of stuff in unrestricted capital. That has to be done in maintenance and operations. So
You want to use that money, you gotta move it.
now, yes, you can move back and forth. Like I said, as we do a budget revision, we can revise the budget to say we want to take, 200,000 of our capital from this year. We want to put it in maintenance and operations so we can use it in maintenance and operations. You can do that. But when it comes to actually funding it, you cannot fund those things out of unrestricted capital. You can only, does that make sense? You have basically where you can spend things. So unrestricted capital, we do equipment, vehicles, software. All the software licenses are taken out of unrestricted capital. So we just wrote out a purchase order just the other day to upgrade our Microsoft licenses. That all comes out of unrestricted capital. Curriculum, we are on a schedule, hopefully to continue this to every year for the last,
This is the
fourth and final year, to buy new curriculum. The school has been without curriculum or extremely dated curriculum for many, many, many years, and that was one of the things that Superintendent Rogers wanted to do and was on her priority list, was to make sure that the school got updated curriculum, and I think that's awesome because the classrooms really need that curriculum. When I was working as a para, and even when I did substitute teaching work, it's difficult because when there's nothing there, you got to come up with it on your own. So it was very important to do that, and that comes out of unrestricted capital outlay also. Any questions on those two funds? They are the major ones. They're the ones that we deal with pretty much all the time, and where we're looking at things. So the next slide, slide 7, talks just really briefly about average daily membership. So almost everything is based on, almost all of our funding is based on average daily membership in some way, shape, or form. Especially the maintenance and operation and unrestricted capital. So the average daily membership is really exactly as it sounds. It's the average, basically, amount of kids that are here throughout the year. It varies. If a kid's here half a day or a certain number of hours a day, we only get funded for half of their funding, basically. If they're here the full day or a certain number of hours a day, they get funded full. Kindergarten is funded only at 50%. Even though we educate our kindergartners all day long, they are only funded at 50%. It is weighted by grade level, so depending on what grade it is, or grade grouping anyway, will depend on how much funding you get. And also weighted by SPED classification. So our special education students do bring in a little bit more money based on their classification. And that varies all the way through their classifications. I don't remember how many classifications there are, but there's a bunch of different classifications. And with that, our funding is based on the 100th day of the current school year. So 3 or 4 years ago, I don't remember what year they changed it. Do you remember, Denise, when we went to current year funding?
It was changed 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
But 2 years ago, you got to choose if you're gonna stay with the previous year's ABM, or if you're gonna change over, and then it became mandatory last year.
Okay. So with that, we are funded at our current year. It used to be that basically they would say, okay, your average daily membership from the previous year dictates your new year budget. Now we're based on our current year. Sometimes that's really good, because if you are growing, by your 100th day, you can have more funds coming in. But in a situation like we're in right now, it makes it very difficult because, COVID has changed everything and made our numbers lower than what we were expecting them to be. And so we had to kind of pinch and scrape here and there and try to get through. But it makes it kind of a headache for most business managers to try to deal with current year funding, but it is the reality that we live in, so that's where we're at.
I'd like to say that it really complicates it, because it's just like when you do your budget at home, you know what your payday is, and so you can count on what you have to pay out, your bills, what you can have left over. Current year funding, so this average daily membership is your enrollment. So for kindergarten, it's just counted as 50% enrollment. We do get a little bit more for special education students, depending on what they are qualified for, but we never get enough to pay for the services for special education. We're always over budget in that area. The problem with current year funding is that with the state, if a student, let's say a student is absent 10 days, and maybe they have a good reason for it. Maybe mom or dad is in the hospital, maybe they were in the hospital, maybe there's a death in the family, whatever, it doesn't matter, they're dropped by the state. So now we lose all funding for that student for that month until they get re-enrolled. And so it's difficult, it's very difficult. And so, and then just trying to estimate and guesstimate how much you're gonna have. And then of course, COVID complicated everything, but current year funding is disliked by most districts, because at least when you have your budget is set for the year, because it went from last year's ABM, then you know how much you've got. And if you've got a sudden influx of a lot of, kids coming in, you got a problem, you gotta, but for the most part, it works out better so that you know what you can count on, what your basically what your budget is, but with current year funding, it can fluctuate according to these drops in enrollment.
You said how many days the students come before they drop?
10.
10, thank you.
It's 10 continuous though,
I
right?
think it was right.
Continuous. Yeah, the previous year funding makes it a lot easier to plan and prepare. Unfortunately, our legislature decided that they wanted to change that a few years back and made it to current year funding, which does make it more difficult. So, we deal with the hand we're dealt with, and we work with it, but it does make it much more difficult to plan ahead in those situations for sure. Any other questions on average daily membership? The report that we get on the average daily membership can be pretty confusing, but it gives us the sped classification weighting and how much additional funding we're getting from them, weighted by grade level, so it does outline that.
And because of the enrollment complications, your ABM report is never going to match your classroom head count. So if you notice that, It's
I know, I
not
was
gonna,
trying to read.
yeah, it's not gonna match up.
I-
Yeah, so that's what makes it confusing. It's like, well, why is the ADM so low when we have this many students in the classroom? But, there could be some drops and, you know, quite a few drops in enrollment and new enrollments that have been, aren't counted as, one full, 1.0, those sort of things. And then all of your kindergarten, preschool's even less than 0.5. So there's some of the reasons why it does not match up.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Do you have any idea what the lag is? When does ADM catch up to what your classroom was on day X?
Well, it's never gonna completely match because your preschool is a lot less than 0.5. Your kindergarten, I could come in and I could say, in this classroom, I have 30 students, but the state is gonna see it as 15.
Okay.
Because it's 0.5. So we're paying for everything for 30 students in that classroom. We're paying for a teacher, we're paying for the curriculum, we're paying for everything, but we're only being funded 0.5. So, and then you have your other, kids that come and go. So we don't have the amount of students that we start out on day one is not what we are at right now, so it's constantly changing. But the state is, they're right on target, they're right up to date because they have access to all of our attendance and our drops and enrollments and re-enrollments, all that in Power School. So they can see that and get that information. And so, if we have a student that's been absent for so many days, boom, we get some money.
They aggregate off of Power School and other programs too, but they do that on a regular basis. And Debbie Brown is our, I don't know, what's her official title? SAFE coordinator? Is that what it is? Something like that. Anyway, she takes care of all the attendance numbers and everything like that. And she, they'll get the numbers and then they'll send her back, hey, you've got some errors or some things that don't match up here. She has to go in and correct them. And it's a complicated process.
So it's actually a financial unit as opposed to a physical student.
Kind
Like
of,
you
yeah.
said, if there's 30 and the state season is 50, and then with like some of the sped stuff, that's 1 point something.
Yeah.
So if there's the physical count versus the financial count.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So that's why it will never, the twain shall never.
They'll never-
equal. Yeah,
okay.
it will never equal.
We'll wait till Mark gets speed going here. We're good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, we're all the way down on going to slide number 8, which is other funding sources. So this is not an exhaustive list that I put together here. You've got 2 slides of other funding sources. There are other areas where funds come in, but these are just some that I was able to put together so you guys can see all these different areas where funds come in. So Prop 123 was passed a few years ago, and it was passed to generate additional funds specifically for teacher salaries. So that's what 123 came to us as, and it goes directly into our M&O budget. We do not get separate numbers for that. But Prop 301, that is I think the teachers probably call it their bonuses, because that's kind of how it's laid out. But it comes to us in funds 11, 12, and 13. And so it is specifically put together, that is a voter proposition. The voters voted on it to begin with. Fund 11 specifically is supposed to go to teacher salaries. So we take that money and we set a number that we can give to the teachers every year, and it goes into their salary. Fund 12 is a teacher performance pay, and the teachers actually they put together a committee, and they have to actually vote on that performance program, that plan that they put together. And Denise will be having another meeting with them probably here before long to put that together for next year. So they decide how that's going to be, how they're going to be judged, basically, on the criteria that they will have to come up with in order to get that performance pay.
The rubric.
Yeah, the rubric, that's the word that I should be using. That's a weird word. I have a hard time remembering that one, rubric. And then Fund 13 has they basically call it menu items. There's a bunch of different things that we can do with it. What we currently use it for is for teacher salaries. So we take a portion and give it to the teachers in their salary to help increase their salaries. So every month, or I shouldn't say every month, every paycheck, the teachers get a small portion from Fund 11 and a small portion from Fund 13 added into their paycheck for their total paycheck.
And all these funds are shown under the income, right?
Yeah, these are yes, but they're not in. This is not shown in your budget report that we give you.
Right.
Okay. Like I said, if we gave you one for every fund, we'd be here like all day long, all night long, every meeting. I'm sure you guys have better things to do than sit there and look at all that all the time.
I
Go ahead.
interject back here.
No, go ahead.
So when I came in as superintendent, Fund 11 and 13 were in the teacher salary schedule. And I didn't think that was quite appropriate because the amounts that you get from Prop 301 can fluctuate some. So how can you say we're going to get this amount, for sure. So we pulled it out of the teacher salary schedule, left the salary schedule as it was, still pulled it out. So that meant that the teachers got more. But I also want to say that Fund 11 and 13 are used in districts in different manners. For instance, it can be used to help out with insurance costs, for employees, for teachers. Prop 301 is for teachers. So I don't get anything from Prop 301. No one that's not a teacher doesn't get anything from Prop 301. But it is to benefit the teachers. And so, there's different ways that districts use the money to benefit teachers, but it could be to help out with insurance costs and things such as that also, with some other costs that wouldn't necessarily be a bonus, so to speak.
Yeah, every school district does things slightly different when it comes to Prop 301, and there is some flexibility on how it's done. For us as a district right now, our teachers get, our appropriately certified teachers get $1,200 from Fund 11 and $2,400 from Fund 13 added onto what their base salary is. So that's how we have done it as a district.
When you pulled that out of the 11 and 13, you pulled that out of salary schedules, there was a gap there. What was used to fill that in the salary schedule?
When I first came in as interim superintendent, I didn't have a business manager, and so I worked with the county, and $500,000 was found that we didn't know, or the district didn't know we had, and so that is something that we used to just pay the difference in the salary schedule. And so we just I wasn't responsible for putting it in there, and I just didn't think that was a good idea to put it into the salary schedule because, like I said, it can fluctuate. So, and then what if Prop 301 goes away and it's in your salary schedule? So anyways, we were able to afford to take it out and to keep the salary schedule without decreasing the salary schedule. That would have been, I couldn't have done it.
Good work finding $500 grand. Great job.
Yeah, actually, Prop 301 was set to expire.
Yes.
The legislature did continue it, I believe, another 10 years is what they continued.
But I was afraid it was gonna go away.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we can't, be, counting on 301 for something, we need to make sure we can afford our salary schedule without 301 monies.
So then something that is coming up very soon is Prop 208 was passed by the voters in November. So we believe we will start seeing, I think they said that we would see the first monies from that in January of 2022, I think is what we've been told. A portion of that is supposed to go to teacher salaries to give teachers increases. A portion of it is, I believe, set aside for administrative costs, and there's another portion for something else, and I don't remember what exactly, but we'll be having to make sure that we stay within those guidelines of how Prop 208 is supposed to be funded. And we don't know how they'll send the money to us. So Prop 301, we get some in Fund 11, Fund 12, and Fund 13. Prop 123 went right into our M&O money. So we don't quite know how they're going to give that to us. We'll see what the state decides how they want to handle that and giving it to us, and we'll move on from there.
Hopefully not in the credit card.
Hopefully not in the credit card. They give you a gift card.
Energy gift card.
And
You have a
sometimes
gift card.
we're promised money and we never get it.
Yeah, so I.
Or we're promised a certain amount and we change.
Well, that's always my concern with even like these voted on things is, okay, so now the state says, well, you're getting more money here, so you don't need as much over here, and that's trouble. So then we also have entitlement grants. I missed one on this entitlement grant, which was the IDEA, but we have Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, RLIS, which is the Rural and Low Income Schools Grant. We have the Gifted Grant. We have the IDEA Basic and the IDEA Preschool Grants. All those are entitlement grants. We get an allotment basically from the ADE. They tell us how much we're going to get every year. It is, again, based on ADM. Most of them are anyway. They look at the ADM, they look at our Title I status and determine how much they're going to give us in those. And each one of those grants has its own purpose. So you can only spend those monies for the purpose of what that grant is for. And
So not all schools are Title I schools, so we
Right.
explain what Title I is, and explain what Gifted is and IDEA.
okay, so so you want me to explain Title I? Title I, I don't know that I can explain Title I well. Can you explain Title I well for me?
Well, we're in a high poverty,
Yeah.
an area of high poverty. So not all school districts are in that type of area where the free and reduced, where there's so many students that and families that qualify for free and reduced meals. There's so many in our district that everybody gets to eat free. So because we have so many that are eligible for free and reduced meals, we're in Title I. Both of our schools are Title I schools, we're a Title I district, so we're eligible to receive Title I funding.
And those have specific purpose. Like we have a Title I reading program and a Title I math program. So kids are pulled out for extra help in reading and extra help in math for both of those. We also fund our capacity coaches at both schools, which are supposed to help improve our education or our teaching instruction. That's the word I'm looking for in the schools. And so those are some things that we fund. We have paraprofessionals that are funded out of Title I that are part of that reading program and part of the math program. And we do a Wilson reading program that's funded out of the Title I program. So there's a lot of different things that can come out of the Title I program, but it does still have its stipulations that there are certain things it can be used for and certain things it can't. Going to the IDEA, since you mentioned IDEA. IDEA is Individuals with Disabilities something Act. I don't know what the E is, but anyway, it's for special education purposes. The major thing that we utilize our IDEA grant for is to provide for speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, And what's the fourth one? Speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy. I can't remember what the fourth one is, but anyway, therapies basically for our students. So we contract with a company who brings in those therapists, and they help us out with that. And we also contract with a psychologist that helps with our psychology part of it with SPED students. And then you have the IDEA preschool grant, which is the preschool. Our preschool is a SPED preschool. We do have some regular ed preschool students in there as they need peers, but it is a SPED preschool, and part of the funding for that comes out of that IDEA preschool. The RLIS, Rural and Low Income Schools Grant, is basically a separate funding, but it basically holds the same rules as Title I. So we, for this next year, part of our summer school, which we'll be talking about at the board meeting, part of our summer school will be coming out of the RLIS grant. The gifted grant is for gifted students, and they have their own funding for that to help with their program. Title III is ELL, so speakers of other languages. And we often think it being Spanish around here, but it doesn't have to be Spanish. It can be any language at all, but it's to help them learn English. Title II is teacher improvement, and Title IV is student. Don't remember. I'll have to look that one up. But those are all the entitlement grants that we have. Then there's competitive grants, and we do apply for some competitive grants. The SROs that we have at both schools were a competitive grant. That grant was kind of done in an interesting way in that it was competitive for the first year, but the following 2 years after that, it becomes an entitlement grant. So we are entitled to it because we competed for it, and we won the grant. So it is an entitlement or a entitlement grant now for the next 2 years. That's one that we did recently. We also, a couple years ago, were able to, through the competitive grants, be able to get the National School Lunch Program grant. And we were able to get new ovens at both of our schools and new walk-in freezer at Arizona, walk-in freezer and coolers over here at the Toltec school, which was badly needed. I'm pretty sure they were original to the building, so the old ones were. So.
A new bus.
Oh, yes, I forgot about the new buses. Yeah, we had the Volkswagen grant program, which if you're not familiar with that, the Volkswagen owed the government a whole bunch of money for cheating on their diesel cars. And the state, our state, took that money and put it towards school buses. And so you could apply for a grant for a school bus. We actually got 2 buses through that grant, which was very nice.
We got one through the regular grant for the state, and then the other one, they gave some of the money to the county. And then when our county superintendent, Joe Bassard, let the Pinal, all the schools of Pinal, districts of Pinal County know, then we applied for that, and then she only had so much, not everybody who applied that, but we were one, so we got a second bus out of the monies that was provided at the county level. So from the state level and then from the county level, we ended up getting 2 buses. So
and they're nice buses.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, they're very nice buses.
Yes, and very well,
very nice.
needed.
Yeah, for sure. Going on to the next slide on slide 9, just a few other areas where you can get other funding. We do get some funding from Move On When Reading. That is actually based on a calculation with your ADM. That is actually a calculation through that. The Move On When Reading program, we are using those funds to subsidize kindergarten. We did get this year some early literacy funding. We are going to use that for the same purpose, to subsidize and help out the kindergarten program. Since we only get funded, like we said, at 50% for kindergarten, some schools only have half-day kindergarten, and for years we only had half-day kindergarten because you're only funded at half-day. But we are doing them for the full day, so we can fund them through some other means. Bonds are another funding source. We had a bond on the ballot this last year. Unfortunately, it did not pass. We are still finishing off a bond. I believe there's 1 or 2 payments left on the current bond, and it will be paid off. But bonds can have certain purposes also. You can't just go, hey, I want a bond for a bunch of money and then I'll figure out how we're going to do it later. You have to write out. Denise spent hours and hours and hours and hours working on our bond this last year, trying to put everything together and working with some legal advice and some other people helping us with that. And once you put that bond out to the voters, then you have to use it for the exact purposes that you have put out the bond for.
The bond is mostly for the monies that you use capital funding for.
Right, I was going to say
So
that.
like, that's why we were gonna get new buses that we needed. We were gonna, do a modular building over here for our students that would normally be long-term suspended. And anyways, it would be stuff that, that mostly our capital funding would pay for, which really frees up more money in M&O, so that, you can staff the new, we wanted preschool, so we would have to meet the criteria of the state, which we would have done with the bond, and then, with the facilities, and then all the staffing and stuff like that would have been done with M&O, which, we would be able to sustain more students, when you have to long-term suspend a student, you lose the funding for that student. Since we don't have regular ed preschool, we don't have any funding for regular ed. As Tim mentioned, there's a few regular education students in our preschool program. That would be the students that don't have IEPs, but there's a very limited amount. They're just to be pure models for the other students. So, but as most bonds are generally used for things that you would fund with capital.
So bonds are primarily capital, and then the other part of that, and this is something we don't have, and I don't know if we've ever had, is a budget override. We ever had?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Budget override basically would allow you to increase your M&O budget through the voters. Have to approve that, but you'd be able to increase your M&O budget above what you normally would be able to do.
So you could give staff raises, do things like that with a budget override.
And the only problem I see with budget override is eventually that expires, and if your voters don't vote it in again, then you have that issue, which had happened in Eloy this last year. I believe they did not pass their budget override, and it's expiring. And so now they're starting to do some cutting of some programs and going, oh, well, we may not be able to do sports anymore. We may not be able to pay our sports, coaches what we were paying them before. And so that becomes a problem when that happens. Sorry, my computer went to sleep.
So all our funds come from federal, state, and then county as well, or is it just federal and state?
Thanks.
The next one that I put on there was COVID relief funds. We talked about that quite a bit. We've had the ESSER grant, which, by the way, they're starting to put in probably should talk about this in the actual meeting, but I will again. But starting to put in the drinking fountains, or they've gotten pretty far on the drinking fountains. Not sure if they're completely done, but you might want to get over there and look at them. But that's one of the things we did with the COVID relief funds, and providing hotspots to students. Those are a couple of things we're doing with the ESSER fund. We just got the ESSER 2 funding the other day, $1.212 million. And that's money that we've already started to put where we need to put it. And then we had the Enrollment Stability Grant. That was another COVID relief money that we used for teacher salaries, moving teacher salaries over to it. And there's rumor that there's ESSER 3 coming. And I believe that may be what's tied in with this current COVID relief package or economic stimulus package that is coming through. So we should see some additional funds there.
Yeah, they just passed that.
Yeah, and we just gotta wait for the,
Yeah,
President's
we don't
sign it,
know
yes.
exactly what it is, like, you know, how many pages they put in that thing. Yeah.
I think the House passed it, Senate passed it, but maybe amendments would have to go back to the House.
Yeah, the House is
Yeah.
gonna do it tomorrow and then.
yeah, they took out the $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tweaked a couple of things.
Yeah, they line items and it'll go back and it'll pass, so I'm pretty confident in that.
So then the last part of the funding sources there that I put in is food service. And that is the reason I put that in there is that food service is actually funded separately from our M&O budget. Food service, we get reimbursed basically for the number of meals that the kids are coming and getting. And as Mrs. Rogers mentioned a little bit ago, we have enough students that are on free and reduced lunch that we have a community exemption. And so all of our students eat for free. And we do get reimbursed based on the number of meals that are served out of our food service. The amount this year has changed a little bit because we are in, our year has been basically run under the summer food program because we're running the buses out and doing food that way. The government made some changes and so, but regardless, either way, we get reimbursed for the number of meals that we give, and that is how the food service is funded. So all the salaries for all the food service workers come out of the food service fund. All the food for the food service comes out of the food service fund, and we can also spend on some capital purchases out of the food service fund. So if we need additional equipment, we can do that through the food service.
And we used to run in the red
Yes.
in this fund for years, but we're doing a pretty good job of staying within the confines of that fund.
Yeah,
We
we are.
put it in the green.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at the end of last fiscal year, we had actually too much money in the food service program. And so we were kind of forced to buy some equipment, which was actually good. We needed the equipment. But we actually had more money than what we're allowed to hold in our account, in our fund for food service. So, any questions from that point? Okay, the last page, or slide 10, it's not the last one. The last one says questions, which we've been doing all the time. Just some real quick funding guidelines that I wanted to just let you know about. In a lot of school finance stuff, they talk about buckets of money, and Mark, you've been in one of the meetings when Araceli did it. She talked about buckets of money and buckets of money. So each funding source has its own guidelines on how it can be used. And so, what goes into that bucket can only be used for that certain purpose. And so just keep that in mind. As we talked about already, M&O can only be used for certain purposes. Unrestricted capital can only be used for capital purposes. Your move on and reading funding, your early literacy funding, all these have their own guidelines and stipulations on how and why they can be used for certain purposes. So some people will look at, why are you doing this? Say, why are you buying buses, but you can't give teacher raises? Well, because that money came out of a different purpose that we can't legally give that money to teachers. I know even back several years ago when they were adding on to ACEs, I heard people say, why are they adding on to the building, but they can't, give teachers raises, or they can't, buy curriculum? Well, okay, it came out of two different purposes. The extension to the building was through a bond, and you can't give money that way. So if you hear people in the community saying, well, how come they can do this, but they can't do that? You might take a moment and explain to them, well, certain monies have certain purposes, and we can only use them for that purpose. We can't use them for a different purpose. And that just gives us a little more credibility with the community to be able to say, hey, that's why. You may see this happening, and that's why. We can only use that money for that purpose. We can't use it for just whatever we want. It would be nice if the government just said, here's your big pot of money, now do with it as you want. It would be great, because we could actually do it based on what we feel are the greatest priorities, but the government doesn't do it that way. So I just gave some examples on there. Like I said, M&O cannot be used for capital purchases. Unrestricted capital cannot be used for operational purposes. Fund 11 must be used for teacher salaries. That is exactly how it's written in law, that it must be used for teacher salaries. Those are just a few examples in there. And the last thing that I just wanted to mention to you is there's a rule called supplement versus supplant. And basically what that really means, just on the ground level, is it's something that we are spending out of state money. We cannot suddenly go, oh, because I have a federal grant, I'll move it over to the federal grant. We can't do that. You can't, once it's paid for by state money, you can't make it paid for by federal money, is basically what that amounts to. That's the easy way of saying it. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the easiest way to put that out there.
Well, good, just keep it easy, because that's where I'm at.
Yeah. And so, if you say, well, why don't you just move that over to the grant? Well, we may not be able to move it over to the grant. That may be why we can't move it over to the grant, is because we literally can't.
Which is frustrating sometimes.
Yes, it is.
There's little rules and regulations and stipulations that seem to get in there tend to make it hard on everybody. Whole bunch of money here, not enough money here, but you can't move it.
Right.
Yes,
And pretty much in the end, that's what we're having to deal with, and that's what he has to deal with, and she has to deal with.
Are there any spend it, use it, or lose it?
You just talked about that one with the
Food services?
So food service, if we were carrying too high of a balance and we did not find a way to expend that money, they would say, pay it back to us.
Okay.
There are stipulations in the grant to where you have a certain time period to use it. And I'll be honest, if you don't use it in that time frame, you've got problems. So, because it's basically 27 months from the time that the money comes to you. Now, we always spend as much of our grant as possible in that first year. It does carry over the next year, but it won't carry over to the following year after that. So, so if you don't spend that money in that amount of time, you've got some real issues. Is there anything that you maybe had a question on that maybe we didn't even cover it, didn't even get close to covering it, but something that you've been thinking about that you wanted information on?
I think you did a good job, thank you.
Thank you. And I even gave you 5 minutes to spare.
Yes, you did. You gave us.
Bathroom break.
Exactly.
Well, I think first thing, do we have to move out? Because we have to move out of session. So, I need somebody to give a motion, to close the session.
Give a motion to close the session.
All right, Mr. Doherty has made a motion to close the session. Who can second?
I'll second.
All in agreement, say aye. Aye. All against? Passes. We will. dictate themselves. They
Yeah.
can't, they're not motivated to do it, you know, and if they don't have a parent there to do it, you know,
Yeah.
they're 12, 13, 14, their parents are at work and they come home, well, did you do your homework? All right, it is now 6 p.m. and it's time for the board meeting to open. And let's start with let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I was trying to figure out who to have do the Pledge of Allegiance. My tongue is so tight. And since you stood up first,
I guess I-
I take it that you're going to lead us in this. There we go.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mr. Gray, since you're standing there and looking right at it, if you could lead us to the treasure hunter pledge.
As an adult and a treasure hunter, I am committed to search for all talents, skills, and intelligence that exists in all children and youth. I believe all children are capable of success, no exceptions.
Moment of silence, please. Okay. And now, if I can sit myself back down. All right. Could you help me out and give the
I
roll
sure
call?
can. Mark Lindgren,
Here.
Steve Cartwright,
Here.
Tim Kaysen,
here,
Bill Doherty,
here.
James Gray,
Here.
all present.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, okay. And we have the approval of the agenda. And all I have to do is, if everybody agrees, the agenda that we have, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the.
Mr. Courtwright has seconded. Are we all in agreement? Say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passed. Moving on. Now we have approval of the action consent items. If I have approval of the action consent items, all I need is a motion to approval.
I move that we approve the action consent item.
Mr. Courtwright has made a motion. I need a second. Mr. Kaysen has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? That'll pass. Moving on. Now we move on to number 4, superintendent's summary.
And special thanks to Nada Ferguson for all of her efforts to provide for on-site COVID-19 immunizations for all employees who chose to be vaccinated. So thank you, Mrs. Ferguson. And just have some data here that, just some vaccination feedback. ACEs, we have 63% of the staff have or will be vaccinated, 18 aren't sure if they will be, and 18 say 18% no way, Jose, no, they refuse. TES staff, you have about 47% that have or will be vaccinated, 33% aren't sure, and 21 refuse. Of course, the percentages are rounded off, so if you're trying to count it to 100, it doesn't quite equate, that's why. The district science curriculum committee, facilitated by ACE's instructional coach, Dorothy Lamb, they're reviewing curriculum, and they're going to have a proposal and presentation ready for the May board meeting. And Jana Weaver, who is a teacher at TES, received funding through Donors Choose for a classroom project. It's called Interactive Learning, an engaging, fun way to learn hands-on. So we want to say, way to go, Jana. I think it involves, do you remember the equipment it involves? Is involved receiving a new TV or something?
Yeah, it's like a smart TV. She got a big, like, 55-inch TV or 60-inch TV, and it becomes a smart, like, touch screen deal with it. Yeah.
So pretty awesome. So the other teachers probably see that and say, hey, I'd like to have that. So anyways, we're gonna say we had to go with Jana. And some projects that are in the beginning stages that can be funded with the SR2 grant are new computers for teachers, are computers that our teachers are using on dinosaurs. And then
To say the least.
yeah. And then we need additional student computers, so we'd like to purchase ahead of what we generally purchase. And then summer school sessions, so for this summer and for next summer, continuing to provide summer school. And we would like to remove the carpeting. This was on our bond that we had wanted. But you know, our carpeting is disgusting, you know, it's here at Toltec, it's been here probably since the building.
I don't even know what color it actually really was.
I think it's orangish. So, but
Or just brown?
yeah.
Okay.
So we'd like to remove the carpet for sanitation and air quality improvement. I myself am highly allergic to dust, and I live in a dust bowl, I know, and mold too. And you know, we do need to, we will improve our air quality by just improving, and then we can get big sweepers and floor cleaners.
Easy to clean.
Yes.
'Cause I tell you, I took all the carpet out of my house and I got ceramic and I love it.
Yes. Yes.
It's easier to clean.
Exactly. And you can keep, you know, so we can vacuum, and every summer our carpets are shampooed. It just grinds the stuff down deeper.
Pushes it right in there where you'll never get it out.
It's just-
And then they use them cleaning chemicals and whatever for the carpets.
Well, I just know that carpeting holds in everything. And whatever's wrong or whatever you're breathing out and breathing
Yeah.
in, it's coming through that carpeting. I guarantee it, I know it for a fact. So, especially with that being there for that long, I don't think it was ever meant to be there that long.
Right.
No carpeting's ever been meant to use that.
Right. And then in ACES for years, from the time it was first built, breakfast was eaten in the classrooms. And so you've got, you know, eons of spilled milk, you know, residue built up in there too. So the first step is to have everything tested for asbestos, because that could be in the glue in the carpet, which is news to me and not welcome to news, but we're going to go forward with that. There's a PO that is finished as of today.
It's gonna be written tomorrow morning.
It'll be written tomorrow morning. So that's the first step in that. And then we're also having our air conditioning and units cleaned and sanitized. So Mrs. Ferguson has led this also, so thank you for this, Mrs. Ferguson. She has gone in with the air conditioning company and looked and analyzed things and found out that there's something, a gel-like substance that they can adhere to after you clean them, to the coils, which is a sanitizing treatment, and it maintains a sanitizing, ability for 6 months. So,
Like a car air freshener is what it is. For like sanitary purposes, just you liken it to something like that. It just lasts for a little while so that we'll continue to clean those clothes.
If we were moving carpet, shouldn't we wait to clean your machine until after that? Because that'd be a pretty dusty, dirty business, wouldn't it?
well, if we proceed, well, as the governor expects us to, there's no way we can get the carpeting out before the 22nd.
Yeah.
And we do need to improve our air quality, so we probably wouldn't have, in fact, removing the carpeting will probably take us a few months to get done, because we'd have to do it in sections and stages and things like that. So, and then on the ACES campus, there's some filters that are missing, and there's not even racks to put the filters on. So those racks are being built, and we're fixing all of that on the ACES campus. So, and then this was done a few years ago to increase efficiency of the air conditioning units it's not air conditioning units, it's called
Chillers.
chillers. No wonder I hate chillers.
You try to block it out of your mind. don't
Oh
you?
my goodness, these chillers have been awful to deal with. But they're chillers at ACES, and was to close off the vent that'll bring in the outside air. So for the efficiency of the chillers. And so we are, of course, making sure that those are open so that for the air quality and, so there were several rooms that needed that to be open. Our personnel can't do it. You have to get in there, and so we also, is that completely done? Not yet, or is that?
Which part of
Has
it?
that been done?
Opening
up
the vents.
those,
They're all
outside
open.
air. They're all open now. So that will also improve the air quality, unless we have a balloon. And then
Right. Then it will be
all down
all
the
over
drain.
with, yep.
all down the drain. Okay, that's all.
Okay, that's all you have. Okay, we're gonna move on to business manager B section. And there he is, right there.
Out here.
Okay.
All right, so you do have the budget report before you, and just a little while ago, we kind of went through what each one of these things means. So the number that I want you to look at is the budget balance at the very bottom, $268,654.54. That's the capacity we have remaining for the year. However, if you've read the notes in your agenda, you will notice that we do have we will be taking a $255,000 reduction to the budget due to the governor's executive order back from, I believe it was back in August, that he made the executive order that any student who was not in person was only going to be funded at 95% of their funding level. So as it currently stands, they're estimating that we're going to take roughly $255,000 budget decrease. We will see that number change a little bit because since we are going back on campus, that $255,000 is the estimation for the entire year. But since we are going back onto campus as of you guys haven't voted on it, but by governor's order, we got to go back on campus. So we will have some students back on, so that percentage will come down a little bit of numbers of students that are on campus. So it will change some, But the point being that we will be doing a budget revision probably at the May board meeting, where we will be moving money from capital over to the M&O budget in order to meet that need. So that does put a hindrance on some of the projects that we would like to be able to do. My honest hope is that the governor goes in and rescinds that executive order, so that way we don't have to take that hit, and that he realizes that it is just as expensive or more expensive to educate students virtually than it is in person. But as of right now, he's not done so. So we are, as we said before, we deal with the hand we're given, right? And so we will work through that at that point in time. Hopefully between now and then he rescinds that executive order and we can be funded fully. If you look on the second page on the grants report, you'll see that we are still moving forward with the doors and the building C and D roof. We are getting the bid packets finalized. I actually put my note in the wrong line. The bid packet that is with the SFB for final approval is actually the C and D roof, not the doors. So I just noticed that I put that in the wrong line. I apologize for that. Mrs. Rogers mentioned the ESSER 2 grant already and the things that we already have set aside for that, so I won't insult your intelligence by repeating all that, but just note we have some really good projects and some really good things coming to utilize the ESSER 2 grant. We did get $1.212 million. And we were told, I think I mentioned this earlier, that we were told that there should be an ESSER 3 grant coming also. We don't know how much money that will be, but when it does come, we will certainly find some good projects, worthy projects that the school needs done to utilize those funds. Is there any questions? All right.
So,
Good.
would that carpet job come under this?
Yeah.
Because they improvement to the.
Oh, I will mention this to you. I submitted the grant earlier last week, and Mrs. Rogers doesn't even know this. We just got director approved for the grant, so all the items that we put into the grant have been approved by the ADE. So we are free to move forward on those projects. Perfect. That literally came in while we were in the middle of our budget meeting earlier. So.
Wow, that's good. Excellent.
Why did you make us wait so long?
Well, it wasn't the topic of discussion at the time, so.
And the government, everything moves so slowly. I'm just surprised it came.
That particular grant, ESSER 1 was the same way. The ESSER 1 and the ESSER 2 grant, they've actually moved very quickly whenever we submit the grant to them to get that approved so we can be moving forward on stuff. So those two grants, the rest of the grants are moving at snail's pace when we go and send something in. But those two grants, they've really been working hard to get them approved quickly and through the process.
Slowest is that stuff.
Yeah, that is the slowest.
That is we've been working on for years.
Yeah, I know, it's like this. Spot. Okay, I guess we're moving on to 5, call to the public, or did he close the public?
No.
All right, well then we're gonna move on to 6, action items. A, sale of the used vehicle.
So we have an old pickup, 1998 Chevrolet, that has a few issues and needs to go bye-bye. So we're asking for permission to sell that truck. We already have replaced it with the truck that you saw 3 or 4 months ago when we replaced it. It's, we purchased it in November. So we're just asking for permission to sell this 1998 Chevrolet pickup.
Which takes a while to get started if you do want to use it, so. Anyway,
We will be doing so through auction, public surplus auction is how we will sell.
okay, so, sale of a used vehicle. Anyone want to make a motion that we sell this vehicle?
Yeah, motion, we approve the sale of the used
Well,
98 Chevy pickup.
there you go. Mr. Casey has made a motion. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, get a second, Mr. Gray. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All against? Motion passes. Now we move on to B, 21-22 school calendars.
Every year, I head up a district calendar committee, and we met virtually on the 26th of February. And beforehand, a calendar survey had been made available for our families and staff. And basically 79% were in agreement with a modified calendar that aligned with the breaks scheduled for Casa Grande Union High School District. And the reason we're even interested in the Casa Grande Union High School District breaks is because we're a feeder into the high school there in Casa Grande. So when we, that means that our students, visit those high schools, are expected to go to the high school there. And then, so when we have breaks that match with Casa Grande Union, then families who have students in elementary and in high school, such as Mr. McCain, though the family will have the same vacation that it lines up. So it makes it convenient for the families who have students at those schools. And then 21% disagreed with any change to our calendar. They like the traditional calendar with the 1 week breaks. And when we're talking about 1 week breaks, we're talking specifically fall break and spring break. So since a modified school calendar was preferred by a 58% margin, then you're being presented with a modified calendar. Now, what it does is it gives a 2 week break in October, the first 2 weeks in October that align with Casa Grande Union High School District break, the traditional 2 weeks in December, and then spring break for 2 weeks in March, mid-March. So we really don't see that our students have to start that much earlier. It would be a 2 week earlier start. So the student's first day is July 26th, and then their last day is May 25th. So that calendar, you have the calendar for the students and teachers, and then the subsequent calendars are aligned to that calendar for our employee calendars. Now, I do want to mention that there is 1 day added to the teachers' contracts, or added to the calendar, which goes on their contract, and that is due to May 6th. Our first Friday in May traditionally is our health fair. That's when we learn all about our new insurance, when we sign up for what plan we're going to go with. That is a half day. We just do the health fair, and that's it for the day. And then the teacher checkout day is just a partial day. I mean, there's no set hours for that either. But we have to count those as a day apiece instead of last year's calendar. We counted 1 half day plus 1 half day equals 1 day for May, but we can't do that because the accounting system can't accommodate half days. So it's no extra time. It's just counted as a work day.
All right, any questions?
And this will start. So the first day of school will be in July.
Yes.
Just a week ahead of, earlier than we usually do the first week of August.
Yeah, and then kind of ending instead of earlier in May, ending, around the last part of May. And then we also had summer school already written in there, since we know we can fund it. So that would be from June 1st to June 30th.
Have you received any feedback about, starting before Labor Day, and where people will be gone or anything like that before Labor Day, you know?
We've started school for Labor Day for years.
And no negative feedback. I mean, people don't say, well, my kid's gonna be gone the first 3 days anyway.
No, Labor Day's in September.
I'm sorry. I read the calendar, I'm sorry. I had July and August, so never mind.
You brought me back to my days when I started, we used to start school
Yes,
back in the day right after Labor Day.
yes, yes,
And we'd get out till almost the end of June, some.
yes, yes.
Well, the only thing I say is this 79% are in favor of it, that's almost 80%.
And I've looked at it, it seems fair and talk, you know, not to have discussions about it. And
It seems like
it seems like
the
it's
majority behind it.
It's spot on right now for what we need. Obviously, if any changes need to be made, it'll be brought back. Sometimes we miss things, sometimes things aren't. But I think this time around, it's right on the money. Anybody else have anything to say?
I think if we were closer, if we had like 50, 40% or something like that, then we would wanna, do another survey and get some. more
It's
feedback.
so, that's when it hit me right away, well, 80, almost 80%.
Yeah.
It's way, yeah, so, and looking at it too seems to be, it looks correct, to me, I felt good about it when I looked at it and checked it out and it's explained to you. So, if anybody has anything else to say? If we're in agreement that we're going to make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve modified calendar.
All right, Mr. Darty has made a motion to approve the school calendar. And I got a second by Mr. Courtwright. All in agreement? Say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passed. Now we move on to C, hybrid scenario start date.
On January 14th, you decided as a board that we were gonna begin school the Monday following spring break. And lo and behold, there comes an executive order saying, you'll do what we had already planned to do. So we're right on target and to start, this is just a matter of protocol because in alignment with the Governor Ducey's executive order, if you don't have a spring break, then you're supposed to start by March 15th. If you have a spring break, then you're supposed to start the Monday after spring break. We currently, in the attachments was last week's COVID report. This week's COVID report has changed over to the CDC's guidelines. So we are still, as a county, where the transmission level is considered high. But the executive order, it doesn't say that if your transmission level is high, that you get to delay or you should delay or anything. It's all, it doesn't matter. So if it's high transmission counties, you must be open, with in-person instruction and virtual instruction options, which is the definition of hybrid. So that's what I do want to say though, that even though the transmission is high in the county and our number of cases is high and in the red, it has decreased. So in the last week's report, which was weeks 5 and 6 of the year, we had 224.3 per 100,000. And now we have 202.3. So we've gotten better there. And then the percent positive has decreased from 10.06% to 5.63%. So we are still moving in the right direction as far as the COVID data. And we're asking that we just approve the hybrid scenario to begin Monday following spring break. Next week is spring break, so it'd be,
22nd,
yeah, not next Monday, but the Monday after that.
March 22nd, start date.
Yes. And then we would be in alignment with Governor Ducey's executive order.
Well, we already had that planned out anyway, so his executive order is moved, okay, so,
We were gonna do this anyway.
yeah, with or without approval. Anybody have questions about this? I think we spoke compassionately about it earlier, to be honest with you, about getting the kids back in and get this done, so. Anybody else?
I just want to say that we have our staff at our sites that have been working hard to be ready, so they're already moving in that direction
Good,
and
excellent.
preparing.
And how do we, Narda, how they do with the vaccinations with the teachers?
We did okay. I mean, it would have been nice to have everybody, but
Right. Yeah.
that's,
At least,
that's, our hands are tied on that.
yeah,
That's there,
at least some got it,
Yes.
right?
yes.
So we got that, at least some are back.
I mean, if you were afraid to be around anybody and fear of COVID, then you should have gotten the vaccination.
Right.
You know, I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
If you didn't, well, then, you know, that's on you, you know. So, if we have anything else?
Well, I think that's actually mentioned in the executive order is that vaccinations have been available. There's been enough time, you know,
Yeah.
to participate if you were going to, that sort of thing.
We offered it twice.
Time to have.
Yeah, we've been off the choice.
Yeah, we offered it 2 different times.
Right.
All right, excellent. So I think hybrid scenario start date, the of March 22nd. But do we have a motion?
I move that we start on March 22nd.
Excellent. We have a motion by Mr. Courtright. We start on the 22nd. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Mr. Kaysen has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? Passes. We move on to D, 21 and 22 summer school sessions.
Yes.
Yes. We know where you are.
Boys who are going.
Gonna go to summer school. So since our last day of school for this year is June 3rd, summer school would start June 7th and would go through the end of June. And then summer school for 2022, so next June, which was on the calendar that you adopted, will be for the full month of June, June 1st through the 3rd. And I want to say that we're going to offer summer school to all students who would like to participate. So it's not going to be limited according to test scores or such. It's going to be for all students who would like to participate.
And this was a big thing with the ESSER 2 grant, that they really wanted you to focus at least some of your monies on the learning gap that students are having currently.
Yes, and you know, for the longest time, we didn't have summer school.
Right.
So we implemented summer school a couple summers ago. I made sure that we implemented summer school. It is important, you know, that's a long time, and our kids, you know, a lot of kids regress and then they have to do so much reteach. I do wanna bring out too that when we start school on, well, those that are coming onto the campus on the 22nd, there's not going to be as much time to try to decrease that gap because testing, we've got that state testing to take care of. So that's going to take, you know, a huge amount of time the focus basically for your, so basically they'd be coming back, you're getting procedures in order, getting ready, and then taking the test. And so there will be some delay there too, just because of that testing reps, which we didn't have it. But we
Yeah.
have it.
Put us on down a road that's difficult, but I know the schools can handle it, they'll take care of it. It's difficult, but I know they can do it.
Yeah, we have to make every effort to get every student. You can only test in person. That's, you know, a state
Yeah.
mandate. So, but we have to document that we've made every effort to get every student on campus to test.
Is that, when they take that testing, the in-person there, are they with a teacher, or can it just be an?
Everyone who administers the test has to go through, I'm the district testing coordinator, so I have to go through a series of, every year, I have to go through a series of trainings and then sign, you know, and make sure that's documented. And then from there, you have your site, district, you have your site testing coordinators and your special education testing coordinator. And then everyone who is administering the test goes through a training on campus.
So it's not just a warm body to make sure.
No, they're strict protocols. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So, any questions on the summer school sessions? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, this is good.
Maybe bring some kids back in line. I'm hoping. All right, if we're all in agreement, let's, 21, 22 summer school sessions. And make them, and someone make a motion?
Yeah, I motion we approve the June 21, June 22 summer school session.
All right, do I have a second?
No second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Kaysen, a second by Mr. Courtright. All in agreement, say aye. Aye. All against? Motion passes. Now, number 7, everyone's favorite part. Well, not really. B is the favorite part, but A, the next date, does anybody agree with April 12th, second Monday of the month? Next month? I'm good.
I'm good.
Everyone all the way around, I see you shaking heads. Okay, now that works. So we'll do, that will be our date, Monday, April 12th. And next in line down here at the most important thing we have tonight, adjournment. Do I have can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion we adjourn on me.
All right, Mr. Casey made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Courtright seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Tim.